Hi, I'm Dave Eastman, Senior VP of InCommand Services. Today's session demonstrates InCommand's Service Vendor Agreement tracking feature. This feature enables the data center operator to track third-party service vendors and their respective agreements. The data maintained on each agreement include the agreement name, its start date, renewal date, annual cost, the assets covered by the agreement, and more. One prerequisite to this feature is that the operator must first add each service vendor to the site's service vendor list. Let me demonstrate. First, how does one add a service vendor to the site's service vendor list? Well, first thing to do, as always, is to select the site for which you want to enter service vendors. I'm selecting my demonstration site again. And then we go to the Facility Operations menu down to the Service Vendor list. At this demonstration site, I only have 2 vendors listed currently. If I wanted to enter a third vendor, I simply click the New button. It opens a row at the very top. I give the name of the new service vendor, its address, city, state information, and fill in the rest of the columns here. If I have any questions about what the columns mean, I can go to the question mark help link, open up the question mark, and it explains each column of data and how to enter data into that column. That's not the subject of this session, so I won't go into it here. I'm going to not add a new vendor and just leave my 2 service vendors that I already have on my list. Next, how does one add a service agreement to the site's list of service agreements? To do this, once again, we go to the Facility Ops menu to the Service Vendor Agreements menu item. Clicking on that, I'll see a list of my existing service vendor agreements, but how do I add a new one? I simply go again to the New button, click the New button, it opens up a row on the top of the list, and let me step you through how to fill out each column here. The first column here is service vendor. When I enter this, it looks at my service vendor list and gives me an option. I'm going to choose UPS Pros. The agreement name here is a semi-annual UPS maintenance. That's the agreement name that I'm going to enter. The company always defaults to my company. If I am operating and using this portal to provide a service to a customer, that customer will show in the drop-down list, and I could select a company other than my own. The agreement URL is going to be the URL path to where the agreement is stored in your company's repository, perhaps a SharePoint site or something of that nature. But here's where you would paste a URL to have access to that agreement from this page. I'm going to leave it blank for now in this demo. When does the agreement start? Let's say this agreement is going to start January 1st of next year. So I'll select January 1st, 2025. The agreement renewal date is black. Now, the heading here is black because this is not an editable column. It is automatically filled in based on some calculation or computation. I'll explain in a minute. Going to the next item, the annual cost. Let's say the annual cost of this agreement is $1,000. I'll put in 1,000. The payment terms. Payment terms vary among agreements. Either monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, or annual. Those are our options. I'm going to say the payment terms on this agreement are annual. And also, though they're almost always the same, the renewal period may not be the same as the payment term. So we ask the user to select a renewal period. In this case, I'm going to say the renewal period is also annual. Now, once I enter this renewal period, you'll notice that the agreement renewal date just automatically populates. Since the start date is January 1st, 2025, the renewal period is annual. The renewal date is January 1st, 2026. The last renewed date was the same as my start date. In this case, it automatically filled in January 1st, 2025. Covered assets is optional. I'll circle back and explain how to enter covered assets in a moment. I can enter any notes on this agreement that I want to remember, and I can select agreement as active or inactive. If at any point in time in the future I choose not to renew this agreement, I would simply change this agreement to not active. In this case, I will leave it active. After I've entered that row, I will confirm. And now I have this new agreement in the list, semi-annual UPS, starting on January 1st, 2025. It renews annually, etc. So entering agreements is just as simple as that. If the operator wants to use the optional feature of tracking each asset covered by a service agreement, the assets must first be entered into the CMMS asset list page. Let's take a quick look at how that's done. Under the Facility Ops menu, CMMS, we have an asset list option. When I select that option, I see all the assets, CMMS assets that I have already recorded for this site. The agreement I'm entering is a UPS agreement. So let me look for my UPSs on my asset list, and I see, yes, all of my UPSs are already entered on the asset list. So I needn't add any new ones. However, if they weren't here, the way to add a new one is simply to click the New button. It opens up a row at the top of the page, and I can enter all the details on a new asset. Again, it's not the objective of this demonstration, so I won't go through this. I'll recall or remind you of the blue question mark. It documents all the columns on the page and how to enter them, so I won't go into detail here. So I validated that my UPSs are in fact in my asset list. So let me return to the Service Vendor Agreements page and show you how to add those UPSs to this semi-annual UPS agreement that I have just created. After I confirmed this creation, the covered assets gives me the manage option. So I'll manage my covered assets by clicking on this link. It opens up my asset list page. I'm going to look for my UPSs on this page. I'll filter for UPSs. There they are. And this agreement is going to cover all 6 of these UPSs, A, B, C, D, E, and Z. I simply tag them and update. And now you'll notice that there are 6 assets covered by this UPS agreement. If I click that Manage button again, those 6 assets are highlighted on my list, and I can see exactly what they are. I'll close this. That is how you add assets that are covered by an agreement. Next, what do these red and yellow highlights mean? On the Service Vendor Agreements page, if I have a yellow highlight, I can hover over it and it gives me the tooltip. The contract is going to need to be renewed soon. Every contract goes yellow when it's within 90 days of its renewal date. The red simply says this contract has passed the renewal date. So it's a highlight saying you either need to renew this agreement or consider it terminated. The final feature I'd like to show you about service vendor agreements is the dashboard widget. InCommand has dashboards, and under the operational dashboard, there's a widget called the Service Vendor Agreements widget. There are many other widgets here, but I'm only demonstrating this one widget in this session. And what this widget tells me is that I have 4 current agreements that are happy. I have 1 agreement in yellow that is within 90 days of needing to be renewed. This is my flag to get to work on it. And it's telling me that I have 2 agreements that have actually passed their renewal date and perhaps need urgent attention. Now, in our operations, we have a weekly meeting of all of our site operators, and the operational dashboard and any number of widgets are part of a weekly review that we look at this dashboard to make sure we're keeping everything current. That concludes this demonstration of how to track service vendor agreements on the InCommand portal. I thank you for your time and thank you for using InCommand.